Welcome, everyone, to the very first episode of my brand new podcast called Pick Up and Play. My name is DJ Switch, and since 2011, I have had the pleasure and privilege of being the DJ and MC for the Portland Retro Gaming Expo here in Portland, Oregon. This opportunity has allowed me to get to know a lot of amazing folks within the retro gaming community, and this show is going to be my opportunity to get to know and hang out with them and learn a little bit about them on a human level. I'm so excited to share this project with you. I have been podcasting since 2009, off and on, and this is the first time I've really felt like this was something that was so close and so personal to me that I had no choice but to make it into a thing and share it with the world. So I really hope that you'll enjoy it, but I want you all to do me a favor. Whether you're watching this on YouTube or listening to this on one of the audio podcast platforms, please do me a favor and pop in a video game. Play a little something for yourself while you're enjoying this show. I want you to be able to relax and have a good time and hang out with me and all of my guests as you listen to this brand new episode of Pick Up and Play. Today, I'll be featuring John Hancock, one of the most prolific collectors in the world. And as you listen to his story, you'll see why I can say that with confidence. I can't wait to share with you my friend John, whom I've known for a little over a decade. I hope that you'll enjoy the episode and that you'll consider joining us for the next one. Here we go. John, man, like, how have you been since the expo? Like, the last time you and I saw each other was in October of this year, and it's been kind of a long couple months for me. I can imagine getting closer to the end of the year for you is always a lot.
Oh, yeah. This last year has been crazy for multiple reasons. Personally, I talked on my channel about my wife and her battle with cancer.
Yeah,
that was crazy, and it's still kind of a thing. It's not like, okay, she's cancer free and now it's done. I mean, she still has a port inserted in her opposite side of her chest. I guess in the chest area of her heart. I guess.
Oh, from
she has
chemo.
A port, and so she still gets magnesium infusions occasionally. It was
Really?
every other day. She was allergic to chemo, and that was like,
oh no.
And then like last year she collapsed. Christmas Day she collapsed in my arms. And so yeah, it's been like a crazy journey about that. So this year's much better, like way better, but like so much has happened even in a couple months. Like, I did a convention after Portland Retro Gaming Expo. I went to Torg in Ohio, and that was crazy awesome. And then just teaching, I'm teaching a new grade this year. I haven't taught 5th grade since my student teaching like 23 years ago. And, YouTube's keeping me busy. I've officially done it like 14 years. Even though I started my channel in 2006, I didn't upload and keep a video till 2009. So
Okay.
long time,
So you don't count those first couple of years. You just count from 09 on.
Yeah, I don't care. I started in 2009 with my just how big an Atom box, an Atom computer box is my first video I uploaded. So
Right on.
Yeah. No, I've been okay. Busy, busy, but so much better than last year. Way less stressed. And just, looking forward to
100% less collapsing wives, which always I think is a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you can go from 1 down to 0, that seems like a positive.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just way less stress this year for sure. And
yeah, man,
we've known each other a long time, and it's just an honor to be on here and just to have a nice, just informal talk about life.
Stop it. Oh man, this is, well, I honestly, I had this idea for this project while I was at the expo setting up for soundcheck this year. Yeah. I'd been looking for something, man, because a lot of folks maybe don't know, when the pandemic hit. So I was a professional DJ I've been a professional DJ for 25 years. And, when I started with the Retro Gaming Expo in 2011, I was already well over a decade into my career at that point. And so when I got invited to come play for the expo, it was just such a match made in heaven because I grew up in an Amiga store, man. Like I grew up being so passionate about games in the 80s and 90s and carrying that passion into adulthood. And so like I could not say yes fast enough when they asked me to come play in 2011 for the Retro Gaming Expo, back before it was even at the convention center. And so fast forward to now, it's hands down my favorite gig of the year. It's hands down my biggest weekend of the year. I put the most energy and effort into that weekend out of all of the things that I do. So in 2020, in March of 2020, like I'll never forget playing a nightclub gig in March of 2020 on a Saturday night, and then it was like an hour out of town. So I had to drive an hour back, and I got back into town and like, you know, 5 o'clock in the morning or something, went to sleep, got up around 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Sunday. And by 3 o'clock, I had a phone call that I lost half of my regular rotating schedule of gigs. And by 3:45, I had lost the other half. So my 20+ year DJ career was just down the toilet in less than an hour. And so I had to find something. So I started making some YouTube videos. I tried some things on YouTube that some worked really well, some didn't. But it was a really fascinating experiment for me. And then I also was able to build a small community on Twitch. And I was doing the Twitch thing until July of this year, when I had been sort of like hovering. I've been sort of stagnating, not losing people, but not really growing either. And I knew if I wanted to make a shift and build a career, I needed something new.
Yeah.
And that's where this show comes from.
Great.
The idea of finally tapping in and having a conversation with all of these folks like yourself that are part of a community that I'm also a part of. Like, I don't know why I didn't do this sooner, man. And I like, ever since I had this idea, I've been just kicking myself like, dude, you could have done this years ago.
Well, there's always there's always woulda, shoulda, couldas, and I definitely have I try not to have that, but it happens. You know, there's things on YouTube that like, oh, I thought about that and decided not to do it, and someone else did it and super successful, and it happens. And gosh, you know, kudos for you for bouncing and landing. And you know, Twitch is a challenge because you constantly have to keep at it. And same with YouTube. You know, I've done it actively for 14 years. I've done for several years 3 videos consistently for a week, 3 videos a week. And I try to balance that. Work-life balance is tough. You know, I'm a teacher by day and just try to keep YouTube as fun. I think it's turned into like, and a lot of my family would say it's turned into like, you know, a little bit more than hobbyist. I try to keep it at that hobbyist level, but you know, as you grow, then you have people that reach out to you. Hey, would you mind covering this or that? And, you know, I'm not going to turn out revenue, but I try to match it with what I do on my channel. And, you know, the revenue that comes in is small. I mean, if people don't realize that, like, you know, the revenue, the time you put in something is small. But I find I navigate that enjoyment and still try to keep it what I want to do. There's always constantly current trends that you have to navigate and decide if you want to, you know, climb up that hill again. There's other mediums, you know, there's TikTok, it's taken off, and, you know, the shorts, these quicker videos, that seems to be getting some more attention. And I've dabbled with that with things that I want to do, but, yeah, it's all art. It's all creativity. It's all hit and miss, and it's all, you know, you got to determine what you want to put up with. And I have like some lines in the sand of like, I'm going to do this, but I'm not going to do that because that's not me. And I try to relatively just keep it enjoyable still, because once it starts feeling like true work for me, I you know, with family and my teaching job, I use it as like an outlet to talk to people such as this. Like this to me is like, I love doing stuff like this because it's more of like a creative outlet where I can talk to fellow people and I don't have to like be anything. I'm not Teacher John. I'm not, you know, the Immortal John Hancock. I'm just John, you know. And it's just cool to just be John for a moment and and just chill.
Well, and that right there is one of the reasons why like you were at the top of my list for people to interview for this, because like you I know you as John. Like you and I have done a lot of stuff together over the years, and we've literally never really talked about it. And I think, you know, and I want to get to that in a second, but I think the first thing we probably should talk about is something that you mentioned. You're a teacher by day. That's like your primary source of income. That's your actual day job, right?
Yeah, it's been for a long time. Navigated some other things. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, do people maybe misunderstand your, like, in your role as a YouTuber? Like, you recently got your silver YouTube play button. Like, do people not understand that like YouTube really isn't your actual job?
Well, no, it's the opposite. I think people don't, what I get, it all depends on who I talk to. I think there's a lot of misunderstandings that like YouTube doesn't pay great at all. And they're actually paying less now than they ever have. And that's because they don't pay for shorts, and that's a whole other story. And I'm not like here to trash YouTube, but like, really as a content creator, it's slim pickings. I mean, yes, there's YouTubers that make great money, but it's really, really tough and challenging. So my day job, people don't understand how I make money on YouTube at all. They like, I tell them and I explain, well, it's minutes watched and how many people watch and the duration, it's owned by Google. And you could just see the deer in the headlights looks like, oh, you lost me there. And it's like, and it's tough because I explain it, you know, and I move on. But like, they don't, like average person does not understand how YouTube works making money, because it's not straightforward. It's not like my teaching job. Every month I have the same paycheck. You know, I made a choice that way. You can take your 9 months of work and divvy it up 12 months. And then my check is the same every month. And I like that. And YouTube is not that way at all. It's like up and down. And this video is viral or did well. And then this video bombed, and it can like totally impact your income. Kudos to anybody that lives on it, because holy cow, that's too stressful for me.
I've learned that, you know, and this is definitely something that I intend to do with this show, is that, you know, the guys who are able to pull a living together by making content are rarely doing it with just YouTube ads and AdSense. Like you really have to diversify, spread out your income streams, and find other ways to generate revenue. For example, this show, the intention, and hopefully this will be the case when this show goes live, because I'm not planning to launch this till January, but once this goes live, I'm planning to launch multiple episodes all at once, and I want to have extended and extra content available on Patreon. I'm trying to set that up.
Absolutely. And I think that's totally the way to do it. And I think that most people, I think now more than ever, understand how little YouTubers make. And I think there's some misunderstandings out there, but I think it's becoming more aware, you know, and support your content creators that you listen to. And, you know, it's super important, and kudos for you. And hopefully, you know, you can even look at getting a sponsor. You know, what if there's a sponsor that could sponsor this, you know, podcast, whatever you want to call it, whatever specifically category you want to call this. But that'd be great. And a lot of people go that route so that they don't have to worry. And it's crazy. It's just, you know, well,
it takes time. And that's the thing that a lot of people, you know, especially like I know content creators know this, but folks that aren't necessarily in that world, like maybe don't think about it in these terms, that time is an infinitely limited resource. You only have 24 hours in a day, and everyone has the same 24 hours in a day. And so like you have to expend a certain amount of that for sleep, right? So then that cuts down on the amount of time you have available for content creating, and like, but not just content creating, making a living, being able to pay your bills, and being able to just like exist without losing your house, or without losing, you know, without going hungry. Like there's, you know, there's different levels of success. I think the word success represents different things for different people. And like my version of success for this would be not buying a Ferrari, which frankly, I'm 6'4". I'd never fit in one of those anyway. Right. Like at my fighting weight, I still couldn't fit in a Ferrari. That's never been the goal for me. The idea here is like, between this and like my wife's day job, can we manage to maintain a small mortgage? Can we, you know, can we manage to continue to connect with people, in this space that we get to have interesting conversations with, like yourself? So like, I think there's a miscommunication or a misconception there about like being a content creator and about what the reality is for most folks. We're not all Mr. Beast. Most of us have day jobs. Most of us aren't doing this for the money. We're doing this because, like, you know, we have that itch in the back of our head. There's an amazing scene, and I've talked about this before, but on other things that I've done. But like, there's an amazing scene in a show called The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. If you haven't watched it, I cannot recommend that show enough. It's this wonderful show about a woman in the 50s trying to break into stand-up comedy, and all of the weird legal and oppressive things that she comes up against as a woman in the 50s trying to go on stage and say foul-mouthed things, right? And she has a conversation at one point with Lenny Bruce, and she goes, "Do you love it?" And Lenny goes, "If I could do anything else in the world, I would." Wow. She goes, "Yeah, but do you love it?" And he just shrugs and walks out the door. And that exchange hit so deeply for me, because if, you know, being a DJ, being a musician, being a content producer, like, if I could do anything else, I would. But it's so deeply ingrained in who I am. And as an artist and as a way of expressing myself, like, I could make $0 and I'd still be trying to figure out a way to do this.
Yeah. My dream job, if you were to ask me, like, what would be your dream job? Yeah. Talking to a room of people offline, just chilling and talking games, and just that be that.
Panels.
And it works great for teaching. And that small group connection, I love teaching at Portland Community College when I did that. It was a long drive, and I was getting up at evil 3-4 o'clock in the morning.
That's a solid hour drive for you.
Solid hour and 15 minutes on Highway 30.
Yeah. Geez. Wow.
And so one way. And then I started, you know, and I was making less than $1,000 a month teaching 2 classes.
Oh no.
So I was going twice. I was going twice a week for 5 years.
Wow.
I did it for 5 years. Paid for the studio. The studio is paid for that money. Now I wouldn't have been able to buy the studio with that money because of everything else. And
right.
But eventually kind of YouTube kind of replaced that. Not much more. In fact, about the same amount of money. But I could do it at home and not have to drive an hour and 15 minutes one way, and have more control, creative control of the content that I was talking about. Because I was teaching Intro to Game Development as one of my classes, and that was fun. It was like half video game history, half use Game Maker, work in a team, make a retro game, and then do a presentation. And then the other half was Intro to Psychology. I'm a psychology, I have a master's in psychology. And so I'm a former counselor. And so that was my other job there, my other class. And so it was a lot of fun, but oh my gosh, exhausted. And then I was doing that around a full-time job.
So in the last year, let me just make sure that I've got the bullet points straight here, because it seems like they're piling up. In the last year, your wife got cancer.
Yeah.
Your teachers union went on strike, because I remember that happening.
That was 3 or 4 years ago. Portland went on strike. Ours didn't.
Okay.
We could talk about.
Well, that was like 3 months ago. I'm talking about 22.
Oh yeah, like years. I think 20
was it 21 or 22?
Strike, and then COVID hit. So COVID, okay. I think was it's strike. We went on strike, and then COVID hit right after that.
So and strike, then, COVID, cancer. Mm-hmm. Silver button on YouTube. So that's like a positive thing, but also a big deal, right?
Yeah.
And then like somewhere in the midst of all of this, you're still collecting games and trying to keep the collection moving.
Yeah, I can talk about that. That's a good segue into. So COVID hit, and I've been talking about wanting, because I have a crazy game collection. I have a crazy game collection, and I've wanted to do something with the crazy game collection for too long.
Real quick, how many complete systems?
I think 36 US.
So you're up to 36 complete US video game system collections.
Yes. Yeah. So and there's like with an asterisk, because there's like some I'm missing, not all complete in box, just US only, not worldwide. You know, and I count weird stuff like, you know, Ouya didn't have a game. I have a hardware collection of that. So every Ouya version, including the LeVar Burton signed Ouya that he did for the Reading Rainbow Kickstarter. So like stupid stuff like that. Like I have a lot of obscure stuff. So not all of it's huge collections, but you know, I've had this crazy collection for a long time. Talked about doing a museum, and it was more on like I want to do it, and then started getting serious about 3 years ago. Formed a nonprofit, did an update on my channel about a year ago, and you know, I'm still moving forward. I think the long story short is when you start getting more serious and planning something, you figure out how really insane difficult it is and why there's not another museum around in your area.
Yeah.
So formed a nonprofit, had a business potentially interested in housing the collection. So the long story short, I don't want to manage where this game collection goes.
Well, no, that's a full-time. That's another full-time job.
And I'm finding even getting a tax write-off it would cost more to get it appraised than for the tax write-off. So I'm currently at a status where I'm still want to work things out with this long-term potential business that wants to house it. The challenge is money, and it's super expensive. And I don't want to, it's not a business. Like I just want my games in a public area. So when my game collection's on at Portland Retro Gaming Expo once a year, I get so much joy out of that. Like I absolutely love that. I hate that over half my collection's in boxes. I hate how it looks. That's why I don't do a game room tour. People ask that. I hate that it's at my house still. People don't realize, like, I want it out of my house. My wife wants it out of my house. I don't hate collecting, but like I'm collecting for the purpose of having something on public display. The challenge is there's nothing out there solidified that can do that. Now, if there's a business watching this and they're on the West Coast and they are interested and they want to house this game collection on public display, you can contact me and I'll give you my email details and we can go from there. But like at this point, I'm willing to have it on public display indefinitely for no money. Essentially, I would like to donate it to a nonprofit so that some other business doesn't sell it. Like, okay, we'll take it and then, you know, selling it. I don't want that to happen.
Yeah. Just the biggest video game flip in the world.
Want to work it out with a lawyer the same lawyer the PRGE uses. Yeah. And then work out an agreement and then indefinitely. Like my goal is to have this on public display. Super challenging. I have a board, a nonprofit board of very intelligent people behind me. It's no longer really my collection, even though it's technically in my ownership. I don't look at it like that. Like I just want it on public display. And at some point I'm going to start looking at other options, but I like having my game collection on public display means everything. It bugs me that it hasn't happened yet. There's a bunch of behind the scenes stuff that's made it challenging. The biggest going is like, there isn't anybody out there willing to host it. And not having the revenue to like set something up. It's going to cost, it's going to be expensive. If someone is willing to make money on someone coming to a collection and experiencing it, that's awesome. Don't want to make any money off it. Really just want it on public display just for the physical aspect, but it's been so challenging dealing with more or less lack of places. You know, the Paul Allen Living Computer Museum shutting down essentially in Seattle. I have some other options too, and the board's looking at that. And maybe scaling back the grandiose options of like, well, maybe we start out somewhere smaller that would take some of it. The challenge for me too is I don't want someone to take on the collection only to have it in boxes, because it's already in boxes. I'll just keep it in boxes in my back in my garage, because if someone's just going to do that far away from me, I'd rather just have it here.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, and I mean, you can, if you start small, maybe you generate a little revenue and then that opens up some doors to be able to kind of expand and grow. But there again, you're running into a problem of there's only 24 hours in the day. You already have, as we established, you know, 2 or 3 jobs plus a wife that's on the mend, you know, like you've only got so much time.
Yeah. I don't want to make any money. I mean, the thing at this point, like someone can have it on public display for free. Like they can have it on indefinitely.
I think that goes back to the same thing that we were talking about. I think there's a big misconception, not only about like your life as a YouTuber, but also your life as a collector. Like people, I think don't realize the burden of housing and keeping and caring for this stuff. Cause you can't just stick it in a box and shove it in a damp corner of your house. Like you got to make sure this stuff is not, it's not stuck outside, that it's not, you know, being accessed by rodents or moisture or mold. I mean, my God, the risk, the longer this stuff sits, the longer there's a risk of something actually happening to this stuff and like damaging it beyond the ability to be able to display or function or any of that. The
storage causes damage. And I've had some pieces get, you know, for the most part, it's been pretty intact and I'm grateful for that. But even slight, you know, you move something and it gets a dent or something, like, you know, it bothers me. It bothers me. It's not on public display yet. I want it out of my house, but I don't hate it. It's just like, but I'm like at capacity. I mean, I'm collecting like my collecting goals now are like maybe 1 or 2 very small sets. I'm 4 away from original and television, and there's a Epic Cassette Vision, which is a weird Japanese console that I got fascinated with. And I want to collect the final 4 games for that, but that's about it. And just odds and ends stuff, but no more complete sets, no more, like, to me, I've kind of climbed all the mountains of that. And like having a huge collection and having that around me, I don't like, that's not like, to me, that doesn't fill me with joy. It's going to fill me with joy on letting the public look at a collection that took over 30 years. You know, I purchased 99% of it with my own money. I've spent thousands of dollars. I don't want anything. I want it. What I want is people to know the challenge it has of doing this journey. And I'm going to do a book just about that when it's done. But, you know, my story, you know, and honestly, my legacy is really going to come down to whether or not this collection gets in the public or not. And for the most public people, they understand that. Most reasonable people have been very supportive, and I'm thankful for that.
Hey everyone, I want to thank you once again for listening to the very first episode of Pick Up and Play. I don't have any sponsors to share with you during the mid-roll yet. However, I am so excited to be partnering with the Portland Retro Gaming Expo on this show. And I'm looking forward to working with them, not only at the expo proper, but also continuing to work with them in developing the relationships and community around this show within the creators and the vendors and all of the people that make the retro gaming community in Portland what it is. Now, in a few minutes, I'm going to be referencing the flight time of the famous Spruce Goose, the Howard Hughes airplane that everyone said was impossible to build. And I referenced the flight time as something like 3 minutes, when in reality, it was actually only about 30 seconds. So I had to correct myself a little bit there. I was caught up in the moment and didn't take the time to Google it. But regardless, I think the conversation is worth keeping, and so I didn't want to cut it out. That being said, I hope you're enjoying yourselves, and please enjoy the next part of my interview with John Hancock. There's a reason this hat that I'm wearing, actually, there's a reason why I wore this hat today, and it's because in 2022, when we came back from the pandemic and we had our first Retro Game Expo back, you came by my DJ booth and you handed me this pin. Yeah. Which I was wearing this hat at the time, and I stuck it right to this hat, and it has not left. It has not moved since I put it there, since you handed it to me. Yeah. The video game museum, like I'm still holding out hope that you'll be able to work out something to be able to find a place to house and display this stuff.
Absolutely. And if anybody watching this knows of a place that's interested, contact me, because
Well,
you know,
and I think that's
yeah.
I think that's really like the real trick of having a museum is that museums do more than just display stuff.
They can't be
They're
static.
curators, they're caretakers. You know, you got to have somebody that can manage, you know, the dust and just general upkeep of a thing.
Theft
That
and insurance.
Yep, insurance,
Space.
security.
Yeah.
You know, you got to be able to protect the stuff from folks who want to, you know, steal from a museum. And yes, we're talking about video games. We're not necessarily talking about the Mona Lisa here, but at the same time, you know, this stuff has value. And, you know, just ask someone like, you know, like the folks over at SideQuest or the folks over at Video Game Wizards. Like, you know, they're constantly having to deal with people trying to break into their stores and just steal like $20 video games.
Yeah,
and it's a headache.
huge issue. And you know, my goal is just to have it one day somewhere. And I'm looking forward to that. I think that to me is going to be a huge weight lifted off my shoulders. People don't realize the stress and anguish that it's caused. Like I'm in a better spot now. I don't feel like the stress and anguish, but like if you were to ask me, if tomorrow would you feel better having the games out of your house? I would say absolutely. It's going to be an emotional time when this collection eventually gets into the public. You know, and I call it my spruce goose. Like I've watched that, The Aviator, and followed. I got to see the spruce goose in person. You know, which is in
out of Evergreen. Out of Evergreen, it's huge. I've been inside it myself. It's massive.
Yeah, this project is my spruce goose, and I've codenamed it that. I want that picture. I want that picture in the museum when it happens, because it's true. Because there's some people that you know have said it's never going to happen, and you know there's always going to be people out there that don't know all the insides and out, and don't have all the information, and are gonna, you know, who have never done a museum themselves. By the way, anybody that's really calling me out hasn't done it themselves.
Here's the reason why I'm laughing at that, and I love this, and I love the name Spruce Goose, because I, you know, growing up here in Oregon and having the Spruce Goose literally just an hour outside of town, like I learned that story pretty young in my life, and I learned about Howard Hughes and about how everybody said he was crazy and about how this thing would never fly, and damn it, he got it off the ground for like 3 minutes.
Yep. Yeah. So,
but he did it.
Yeah, and I think that's the challenge too. Like I don't want this to be in the public for a year and only have the business collapse. And so that's yet another challenge of like finding a viable someone that's willing to host it. And that's a whole other challenge. And, you know, I'm still holding out that this business that had potential interest we can work things out, but that's still a long time away. If there's someone else that's interested in now that wants to host it, absolutely. But like more, you know, being an educator, because I don't call myself a game historian. I'm more of like a video game educator. Yeah. Of just like, I want to inform people on what was out there, what it looked like. And, you know, it means the world to me. Like people don't realize like it's going to be, you know, when it does happen, which, you know, I'm going to do everything I can to make it to have this happen. I have people around me supportive and just have to move forward with some suggestions. And so there was a big company that wanted to buy some of it outside of the US. I won't say who it is, but they were potentially interested in like buying part of it. And I turned it down because I didn't want it outside of the US and I didn't want to sell it. So I turned that down. And so it's just like, I really just want, and I've reached actually initially, recently I reached out to Atari. So really? I reached out to Atari to see if they would be interested in potentially doing something in the United States with the collection. So that's a recent thing that I've reached out to them. I haven't heard anything back, but at least I tried.
Sure.
And I'm willing to go to other companies too. Like, who's interested in doing something with this that can help me? And it goes back to what you said, like having limited time and resources. And like, I'm working 60 hours a week, and I did the hard part. Now, it's ready to hand the baton off to somebody else to see what they can do with this. And I call good. If they make money from it, great. Don't want any of that. Didn't do it for the money. Did it to say, hey, let's educate some people on, what an Odyssey 2 box looks like, one of the greatest box arts ever. Love that. But, is there interest still in museums? How can this work and make it financially viable? Lots of questions.
Yeah.
And that's with those challenges is why it hasn't happened yet.
I think museums, it kind of fall into the art category, which unfortunately falls into the same pool of problems that musicians run into a lot, which is, constant defunding, constant devaluing. People are always trying to, redirect funds away from things like school music programs or school art programs and put them back into, the basketball team or whatever. And it's, it's not to say that listen, I'm a big basketball fan too, or, I like football. I really enjoyed my football team in high school. But it's not that I don't want those programs to fail in place of the art programs. It's that I think that there's a place for all of it. And, and so unfortunately on a sort of like bigger, more adult scale, when you start talking about museums and museums finding funding, a lot of them are just living on subsidization, which, until video games get taken seriously as something that is worthy of a museum space, I think it's going to be harder and harder to find that kind of subsidization to sort of help a thing like a museum get off the ground. There is,
that's why I'm looking at, more or less willing to donate it with the legal protection that it wouldn't be sold.
Yeah.
And that willing to donate it without a write-off, without anything, just donating it to have it in public space.
Yeah. Well,
and that I'm willing to do that at this point. And there's
a museum in Texas, which we've worked with quite a bit with the Retro Game Expo. They seem like really great folks. Is anything that they're doing sort of like setting the framework for what your museum could be? Well,
that's like plan C, but like, I know that they have quite a bit of stuff, and a lot of their stuff is on rotation. So it would be
I don't necessarily mean like passing.
Oh, you like the setup? I mean,
but like what they're doing could maybe provide an idea of.
Yeah, that has been. It's been kind of that's like the gold standard, and so like for me, I see anything that I would be willing to see happen with this as like it's a very different thing, because like they're prototypes and they tell a story. Taking a look at what is done at the PRGE every year, like the Jaguar and Lynx room is a good example. Yeah. That's what I would like my collection to be, is telling a story and having it interactive. And it's a little bit different than what MVM is doing, but plan C would be like, all right, maybe it's to divvy it up into different museums, and maybe that's an option. And maybe, this museum takes this museum takes that. And maybe that's plan C. I want to exhaust all the potential offerings. And really, I still, even though the board doesn't own my games, I still meet, multiple times a year with a nonprofit board to talk about what to do with this collection, because it will be a collective decision. And several people are on that nonprofit board, including Rick Weiss, president of Portland Archery Gaming Expo. I got a mayor on my board as well, who's also a financial advisor, and I have several other people that are highly into video games and intelligent people that are giving me suggestions. Among some other friends that I'm tapping into some suggestions, but I really, the next couple of years, I'd really like to get a place. I mean, I really want to move forward and like get a location or get a business, and then start moving the games out of my house, because like I don't want them in my house anymore.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
I don't want it. I want my space back. My wife wants the space back. In the event that something happened to my wife, which is a high probability, 10 to 15 year life expectancy with a 70% chance of the cancer coming back. I don't want to deal with this if my wife died.
Yeah.
I mean, and I know it's like a downer, but like, I'll still do YouTube. YouTube will look different. I'm going to keep like 1%. I'm going to keep, a couple like game consoles, FPGAs, some of my arcade stuff, just stuff I can play in emulation and in modern consoles. I'll call it good. Everything else can go.
I think it sounds like the plan going into 2024 for you then is not so much collecting as it is just finding a space to house the collection.
I've scaled back my collecting quite a bit, and because of that, because I don't feel like if I'm just going to put it in a box and not knowing where the box is going to go and when, not going to be collecting as much. And
so does that then inform your YouTube content? Are you planning some different content going into 2024 for the channel?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've already adjusted my content just to cover like new products or new games.
Yeah.
Really, I've shifted away from collecting stuff. I've showed a lot of my collection. My goal when I had YouTube was to show what I have, like complete sets, but I've showed a majority of them. And now it's more or less because I think people in general are collecting less. Like collecting has changed quite a bit. People are still collecting, but they're collecting different stuff. And so I've really pivoted my YouTube content to kind of to look at what are people collecting now and still make it fun, or new homebrew stuff and aftermarket, and like even shifting my focus where I'm now I'm a publisher of homebrew stuff. And really kind of focusing on that, the indie titles and stuff. But yeah, I kind of already pivoted that stuff a while ago, knowing and hoping that this collection will hopefully soon not be in my house. And I'm totally okay with that. And if I don't have content because of that, that's like, oh, whatever. I mean, I'm figure something out.
I mean, I don't think you're ever going to be lacking in content. I mean, obviously, you committed pretty fully to the whole collecting thing. I imagine if you committed yourself half as much to the YouTube channel, you'd be fine for a while.
I'd be okay with that.
Yeah. It's funny. We're recording this a couple days before Christmas, and I watched our friend Metal Jesus put out a video a few weeks back, with some of his gift guide recommendations. And this is very embarrassing for me, but I had not heard of the Evercade.
No, nothing wrong with that.
I didn't know what that was. Let me walk that back. I had kind of heard of it, sort of, but like I really didn't know what it was. I really didn't think it was all that serious, and I didn't think it was all that interesting until I saw Metal Jesus Rocks do his gift guide recommendation, and he showed off one of the more recent Evercade releases, and I was like, what is that? So I went looking, as one does. YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world, right behind Google, right? Yeah. And so I immediately jump on YouTube and type in Evercade. Yeah. And there's my buddy, John Hancock, with a bunch of videos all about the Evercade and all of the Evercade stuff. And I got to learn all kinds of stuff. Yeah, exactly. I didn't know, man. I had no idea. And then sure enough, I got to watch a bunch of John Hancock videos to learn all about the Evercade. Like, I think that kind of content is incredibly valuable. And I think going into 24, man, like, especially if people want to see that. Yeah. I think there is a potential there for the YouTube channel to sort of help make this museum thing a reality still. Yeah.
I think for me, it's, and even, is that a company that could help me get something out into the public? And so I think spending some more time, especially in 2024, of like really looking and spending some time on that and seeing who could seriously help me, because that's more important than honestly YouTube content. But yeah, Evercade and Blaze Entertainment, got to talk to one of the contacts there at PRGE, did a panel with them. And what a great company, and I really like what they've done. And one of my homebrew games is planned potentially to be on a future Evercade card. So block 'em, sock 'em. And so really excited about seeing that. That's not in writing yet, but looking pretty good. And so I'm excited about that. Yeah.
Our buddy John Riggs has been in a couple of video game releases where they've like licensed his face and licensed his likeness.
Callets Gamers second adventure is on an Evercade card.
No kidding.
So and so like I told my kids who are playable characters, it's like, hey, you're now on like a video game console that's offered around the world.
That's amazing.
And it's great. Yeah, I mean,
what a flex, dude. Like to go to school and be like, yeah, I'm in a video game.
Yeah, a game that I didn't program, but I was heavily involved with just Insight, and just it was just cool to see that on a cart. And then now moving forward, it'll be an actual homebrew I was more a part of, going to be on it, and so that's potentially scheduled for Indie Heroes 4, unofficial. That's not official yet, but we're in talks, and I'm excited about that. Great company, and I've covered their stuff on my channel. Really, they're doing some great things, and I think that's a perfect balance of I think where the public's at, where I get to collect something and it's retro, but it's not $1,000.
Yeah,
it's like that's the challenge right now with like original stuff. You look at like TurboGrafx stuff, holy cow, super ridiculous. Yeah. And not everything's expensive like that. You can collect, original Xbox games and PlayStation 1 and, here and there. If it's not like uber rare, it's not too bad. But some stuff has gotten so ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing about collecting, man. And obviously I don't need to tell you this, but like the longer time goes on, the more scarce those things are and the less available they become. So of course the price thing goes up, and that's
less people collect it, less people know about it.
Yeah.
And then you go down the rabbit hole for obscure stuff. You're like, what the heck is that? I didn't even know it came out. Like you didn't even know Evercade came out, because that's pretty realistic that, the general public doesn't know what that is.
The Duke Nukem collection, I think, is what got my attention, because I was such a big Duke Nukem fan when I was a kid. My buddies and I used to get together and do like LAN parties where we would play Duke 3D and stuff.
Yeah.
The other thing that you mentioned, though, I definitely want to chat about college real quick, just because absolutely. You and I, working together with the Retro Gaming Expo, and being in that scene, like you and I were going to cross paths anyway. Like I'm very confident of that.
Yeah.
But you reached out to me pretty early on in my career with the Retro Gaming Expo, because you were looking to put together an event called Cowlitz Gamers for Kids, and you wanted somebody to come play some music, and of course, like it was an easy thing for me to say yes to. If I recall correctly, over the course of its run before the pandemic, you and I managed to, we worked together with several other folks and made a little event that raised a little over $100,000 in charity.
$100,000.
Which is not nothing.
Yeah, I mean, it was nuts. Like, to me, one of the highlights of anything I did in the gaming community was to do that show. And so, just for people that don't know, I was the original organizer of the Portland Retro Gaming Expo the first 6 years.
Oh, wow.
And I was with other people, and that kind of took off. I mean, Chuck Van Pelt, Rick Wise, Toby, other people involved, Nick and Lacey, Video Game Wizards, and that turned into a huge success.
Yeah.
The challenge is I was already pulling 2 jobs. I got my college teaching job, by the way, from Portland Retro Gaming Expo, because the dean of the department that hired me saw me speak at PRG and then asked me to go to his class. And so
That's
after
amazing.
3 times, then he hired me. So like, I owe a lot to PRGE. By the way, they funded Cowlitz Gamers every year. So they paid for the show event. They paid for all the upfront costs. So if it wasn't for PRGE, I was just wanting to do a smaller show, because organizing PRGE came to a point where I didn't have the time for it, and I was driving to in-person shows, or I was doing them online, and I was getting pretty burnt out. Yeah. And, you know, hats off to them and turning it into an amazing show. I didn't want to be part of that because I didn't have the time. That's the short answer. And then Cowlitz became kind of a different focal point, and with Jonathan Rose, Chelsea Beck, Corey Strite, Chris Trimu, among others, helped me put on the show, and people such as yourself volunteering your time, doing it for nothing over the years just was great. And it's just the community came together for that show and over 10 years. And I don't know what the future holds other than the fact that, you know, there's hopefully at some point in the future, it can continue. I don't know what the current status is, but what I can say is that it was a highlight of anything I've done.
Yeah, no, it was honestly, it was such a fun experience to do that event, because it was all of like that. And this is the best part, because of all of our mutual connections within that scene. It was a lot of the same folks that make Portland Retro Gaming Expo so special. We're getting together in a smaller room, and then
for charity,
like for charity. And then legitimately, like, I remember going to dinner with you and with Riggs and with like all these people and literally sitting down to a table and having dinner with all of these folks that, like, I genuinely felt like I had no business sitting at that table. Like,
we're just friends hanging out, man.
So cool. And it was so fun. And like, you know, and like we were, you know, you know, having a drink or whatever, and just like hanging out and relaxing and just enjoying each other's company. I remember on the way, I'll never forget, on the way towards the end of the dinner, you and I finally got a chance to sort of like chat a little bit about content creating. And I remember asking you about like, hey man, like because one of the things that I had been learning early on in my YouTube career was how, like, you have to sort of find a way to have authority on a subject that you can talk about, or you have to find a way to generate curiosity for that subject so you can then talk to someone who has authority. And like, you know, when you started talking about your game collection, like, obviously you have this incredible game collection, and that gives you an incredible authority on the subject of collecting games, because you're very obviously an incredible game collector. And so my question for you in that moment, this was 10 years ago now. My question for you in that moment was like, hey, I don't have this super sick game collection to like basically assert my authority on the subject. So like, how do I find something to talk about, and how do I, you know, and you gave me some really, really incredible advice that really sort of informed my path going forward with like how I wanted to get into content creating and sort of get started. Man, like, I will never, ever forget how open and candid and honest you were with me, and like how you, like, just the time that you've given of yourself, especially with all this other stuff going on, right? Like married, kids, jobs, plural, YouTube channel, charity event. And then here's this schmuck DJ going like, hey man, how do I get started? And you were so incredibly generous with your time in that moment. And I honestly, I'll never forget you for that, man. Thank you so much.
Well, it's my pleasure. And it goes back to the number one thing I would love to do is just talk to people in a room. And because there's nothing more genuine than that, than sitting down and someone in person. Because online, you know, this is great. I like it. I feel like you're in the room with me. And this is the type of stuff I love to do. And I think, you know, that always, I had a lot of people help me, and I try to pass that on to others. You know, Metal Jesus is a huge support of me with my YouTube journey. I've had several collectors help me out along the way. Just friends, you know, but yeah, I mean, those are special times. And man. And, you know, I want to thank you for all that you've contributed to the Cowlitz over the years. And people that don't know, it ended in 2019. I got a teaching job, and I couldn't organize it the final year of the show. And so I gave it to some friends to organize. They did a great job, but they got pretty burned out pretty fast.
Yeah.
And they had been organizing it with me along the way, but having a day job makes organizing that show killer, and it's really tough.
Yeah.
But you know, there's some other shows in the area. You got the SideQuest Expo, that is a great show.
That's coming in the
That's
spring.
coming up
April, I think, right? Or March?
March, I think, this year. I don't know exactly the date. But then you have a new Washington gaming convention happening. I'm going to be attending that. And then I'm going to be in Arizona for Game On Expo. And then I'm going to be at, hopefully, I think, got a verbal confirmation, just have to figure out details, Midwest Gaming Classic. And then I'm going to be at Long Island Expo. So I already am planning to be at 5 for the next year. I did 8 this last year. That's a lot.
SideQuest Expo looks like it's going to be March 9th and 10th of 2024.
Okay.
So
so it is March. Yeah.
Beginning of March in right here in Portland. And that used to be like a secondary event for the Retro Gaming Expo.
Yeah.
And Josh Hamlin from SideQuest Games kind of took it over, sort of making it his own.
Yeah, he was already running it. So I'm kind of glad that now it's his kind of baby, and now it's 2 days. I've gone, he's done a great job with that, and going to be there first Saturday. I like to come down for one day, just it's easier for me to just come down. I'll have a table, come by, say hi. And
that was another really fun event that I actually, when I first started my YouTube channel, I went to, at the time it was called the Portland Retro Gaming Expo Swap Meet.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, it's a smaller scale event with like a lot of the same personalities and a lot of the same folks from the Northwest that we all know in this scene. And there's like, I have YouTube video footage of like rolling up on like your table and like hanging out with you for a minute. And Riggs was there, and
good old John Riggs.
Jesus was there, and
huge help.
And like I got to like, I was a fan of Kinsey's YouTube channel. Mm-hmm. And then I finally got to like meet her and like chat with her and like get to know her a little bit like at the expo. And so and the folks from Pink Gorilla Games.
Oh, that's Kelsey. Kinsey. Yeah, Kinsey's now in Japan. She's working for a Japanese publisher. My bad. Unfortunately, she moved, you know, to like pursue her dreams. How dare. Which is amazing. Right? Yeah, heaven forbid. She's amazing though. They just the whole crew was always super nice. Even Drunken Master Paul, one of my favorite of that. Just a good guy. And I'll never forget that's a whole other part. I got to write a book eventually when all this is all said and done. Definitely want to write a book and just talk about kind of the crazy story I have about collecting and YouTube and all that. But
I think obviously you have a hell of a story to be able to piece the kind of collection that you have together. You said 36 complete US.
Yeah,
consoles?
34 to 36. And it's hard to like, there's a couple of ones with asterisks of like, well, I don't have this game that there's only like 2 copies of. Yeah. So like, but there's a couple of collections that are like that. But for the most part, it's confirmed, you know, weird stuff. Atari XE game system back here. Oh, wow. You know, Channel F, Fairchild Channel F complete set. Including 2 demo cards.
One of my favorite moments, you actually it involves you, but you weren't there. I didn't get to link up with you until later, but I believe if I recall correctly, it was the Retro Gaming Expo 2019.
Okay.
And listen, I grew up in an Amiga store, and you know, as much as I enjoyed the Amiga computer system, really my first proper video game console was the Sega Genesis. Yeah. And so being able to be in a room with a complete inbox collection of the United States releases of all the Sega Genesis games, like you are single-handedly responsible for that experience that I had.
Thank you.
And not only was it amazing to be in a room with that, but then, you know, because of my role at the Retro Gaming Expo, I don't get to enjoy the show very much. No. I'm stuck behind the turntables, either DJing or managing my DJs.
Yeah.
And so, you know, because I'm performing, I'm basically performing for 3 straight days. And so, you know, you kind of have to like manage it a little bit to be able to make that happen. And so the only chance I had was on a Sunday morning, about an hour before the show opened. I knew that all my stuff at the DJ booth was already set up and ready to go because I'd been running it for 2 days. And so I had just a small window on a Sunday morning before anybody was allowed into the expo. And I snuck into the Genesis room.
Yeah.
And it was just me and your Genesis collection. And I took a photo of me just sitting by myself with that incredible collection of my very first console. And that is a memory that I will carry with me forever.
That makes my heart smile, let me tell you. And that's what, moving forward, want to offer that to other people if possible. And, you know, that's the type of stuff that, you know, that makes it worth it collecting. You know, just having someone connect with a box or a game. It was a ton of work and a lot of props to helping me set that up. Video Game History Foundation gave a lot of setup ideas and really made the collection look pretty. And, you know, and then Portland Retro Gaming Expo with that, you know, $6,000 plus display case setup to make it look pretty as well. Several other conventions. Amazing. Yeah, I mean, you're most welcome. That makes my heart smile. So
thanks so much, John. I think we're getting towards the end here. Is there anything you want to plug or anything you want to sort of direct people to, the YouTube channel maybe, or?
Yeah, you can check me out on John Hancock Retro. I'll give you all my social media stuff, but I want the plug for you. You know, support this guy. Support this guy. You know, hey, he does quite a bit in the community. Just check his content out and look forward to seeing what you're going to do. And then, yeah, you know, you can find me on Instagram, X, TikTok, and YouTube, Facebook. You know, got my normal social stuff, but 3 videos a week. You know, I do 3 videos a week typically, and I've been doing that for years. And so we'll continue to do that, and just enjoy doing content. But just really, it's been a pleasure being on here and just talking kind of casually. I don't get to talk about stuff like this. I'm at a spot now where I can talk more about it. There's been some things that came up that like you just caught me at a good time. Yeah. So thank you.
Well, thanks for doing the show, man. Yeah, and anytime. Thanks for being my first guest. I appreciate it.
Check out his content coming soon. Be there.
All right, everyone. Thank you again for sticking it out all the way to the end of my very first episode of Pick Up and Play. If you've made it this far in the episode and you were kind of hoping there was a little bit more, I have good news for you. I've reopened my Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/DJSwitchPDX, where I will have extended and bonus content available for all of my interviews, starting with this one from John Hancock. I also have a special bonus episode, an episode 0, that I chose not to release publicly, but I will be putting up in its entirety for the folks on Patreon. So you can go to patreon.com/DJSwitchPDX. I only have a single tier right now, and it's $5 a month, and you get access to all of the extra content, and you get to help me turn this into a full-time opportunity. So thank you so much for staying and listening and supporting the show. And I also have a little bit more good news before we go. This is the first episode in a batch of episodes that I'm releasing. And so if you've listened all the way through this one, I do have episode 2 already available and posted. I posted them at the same time. Episode 3, if it's not available yet, will be coming extremely soon. It's already recorded, and I'm already on the hunt for my next set of guests for episodes 4, 5, 6, and beyond. My deepest and sincerest thank you to the Portland Retro Gaming Expo for partnering with me on this show. And I look forward to seeing all of you in the very next episode, where I interviewed a friend of both mine and Hancock, a guy by the name of John Riggs, another YouTuber that recently received his silver play button, and is not only an expert in video games, but also an expert in things like breakfast cereal and growing up in the 80s and 90s. And so it was a really, really fun episode. And I look forward to seeing you all on the next one. Thanks.